Over the last few years, I have heard a growing negative sentiment about being from the UK and living in the UK, whether it's to do with the cost of living crisis or the weather. There is a growing uproar of people who just want to get out of the UK and want to leave the UK. And I'm here to tell you that being from the UK is probably one of the biggest privileges that I have had, and that you will also have if you are British, but you just have to leave the UK to be able to unlock it. Hi, my name is lamide Elizabeth, and this channel is all about building wealth with no borders. So for those of you who are new here, I am British. I have grown up in the UK for the majority of my life. I wasn't actually born in the UK, I was born in Canada, but my mum was born in the UK, so I'm guessing I probably got my UK passport through that. I left the UK in January of 2023. I moved to Dubai. I lived there for around 15 months, and I'm now currently trying to live between 3 countries, living outside of the UK over the last year and a half now. There is so much that I have learned, and there is so much privilege that I never realized that I had just by being British that has become crystal clear to me now that I have lived outside of the UK. And I feel like if I'm able to share that with a lot of you guys, then you actually start to see some benefits of being British, having a British passport, or even just having residency in the UK. There are so many perks that you can unlock, but a lot of that you aren't actually able to see the benefits of until you leave the UK. Someone said to me, you understand the country that you are from on a different level when you leave. This has never been more true to me since I have left the UK, and I've been able to see the UK from an outsider's perspective and really understand and see the differences between being from the UK, being British, and so many other countries, nationalities, continents, etc. Let's get straight into it. So one of the major benefits that I have seen that is a massive privilege once you leave the UK is there are many countries out there that highly prefer British or Western, let's just say Western for a more broader perspective, Western educated people or people who have work experience from the Western world. So like I said, I moved to Dubai in January of 2023, and I was working in investment banking at the time. And as I networked and I spoke with people, etc., Western expats are often a huge target, right? And so in Dubai, for example, they have British schools, American schools, Iranian schools, Indian schools. They have so many of these schools, but particularly as it pertains to this video, they have British schools. And one of the things that these schools try to portray to the parents who bring their children to the school is that they have British teachers. They're trying to convince these parents that you're going to get the same education here in this school that you would get if you were still in the UK. They just want to be able to say that they have these teachers from the West teaching their students, because that brings in a certain level of prestige. Maybe you feel like you don't stand out from your peers because you are surrounded by everyone else who's also had a Western education and Western work experience. But when you actually extrapolate that to another country, you can go from being someone whose CV would probably never even get looked at to being someone that is pushed up to the top of the pile because they want to use the names that come behind you to prop themselves up, right? And I've seen this so many times, even outside of education. If anyone is looking to move to Dubai, definitely make sure that you are following my network. It's called the Professional Network, or PEN. We do events for expats who are living in Dubai, and also events for expats who want to, or people who want to be expats and want to move to Dubai. And I remember in our group, someone shared a job. I think this job was around research, medical research. I think it was around that field. And they had written out what they are looking for, and they specifically mentioned, I might actually be able to find the post. Let me actually see. Here we go. They were recruiting for a health center, and they needed a medical physician to join the team. And it says here, this is literally the person who's advertising the job. The ideal candidate would be Western trained or Western standard equivalent and currently residing in the UAE. Even outside of education, there are industries that literally want you just because you have a Western education. There's no specification here on what kind of Western education, what grade you got, whatever. They just want that. So you taking your current experience and taking that to another country, you can become highly sought after just for the fact that you are British. And even within the workspace, and I can say this confidently now because I don't work for anyone, but there are certain workplaces that will pay you better even if you have similar level of experience than someone from, let's say, a third world country. They will pay you better. They will give you better bonuses. They will treat you differently just because of the fact that you have come from a Western background. And I'm not saying that these things are right. I'm just explaining to you what I have seen with my own eyes that happens. Sometimes odds can change considerably by taking the very same thing but just placing it into a different market. Another massive advantage you can unlock unlock by leaving the UK as well is being able to earn in the pound. And I think for the longest time, obviously growing up in the UK, being surrounded by everyone from the UK, the outlook on the pound was always very negative, because I guess we've kind of seen the pound fall, especially after Brexit. There was a massive fall in the pound, and the pound is not as strong as it was a couple of years ago, for example. So if anything, we all have this negative sentiment around like the weakening of the pound to an extent. The pound is one of the strongest currencies in the world. It's one of the top 10 strongest currencies, and it's also one of the top 10 most stable currencies. And as someone who has now worked a lot with emerging market countries and have seen what has happened to certain currencies like the Lebanese pound, the Egyptian pound, how they have devalued massively, and people have literally lost their life savings because of their currency that they have their savings in. The pound is one of the best currencies to be able to have anything in, right? Obviously, as I left the UK, my main active earning income stream then moved to dirhams, but I was still able to have my investments in the UK. So even when I was working in the UAE outside of my corporate job, I would still quote brands even who were based in the UAE based on the pound. Also being able to still make investments in one of the strongest currencies in the world was a massive help. And even now, being able to live on a much weaker currency, I'm currently living in Johannesburg on the Rand, and the Rand has not been doing very well, but being able to earn in the pound has been a massive step up to my earning potential. So if you are able to do that, if you're able to maintain some sort of earnings in the pounds or even an asset in the pounds and live on a weaker currency, which will be the majority of other currency, you are able to benefit from massive currency arbitrage. This is also something that I talk about in my course, how I managed to reach financial independence through property and geographic arbitrage. If you're interested, I will leave the link in the description. One thing that the UK has in particular is tax treaties, and the UK has one of the highest number of tax treaties in comparison to most other even Western countries as well. And so what a tax treaty is, it's when two countries basically agree that if one of my residents are residing in your country and you are taxing them, then they no longer need to pay taxes in their home country. So for example, moving from the UK to Dubai, if there was not a tax treaty in place, even though I was earning in Dubai under Dubai tax law, I could have potentially still been taxed in the UK and still be taxed in Dubai as well, or at least have to do some level of reporting, etc. But because the UK has a tax treaty with Dubai, that now means that when I left the UK and became a resident in Dubai, I could actually benefit from literally not having to pay any personal income tax, because the UK gives up their right to tax you as a resident and hands it over to the country that you are currently residing in, which is why a lot of people are able to benefit from the fact that Dubai has no personal income tax. However, there are some countries like the US, for example, where even if you move to a no personal income tax country, you actually still do have to pay taxes. And even if you don't have to pay taxes, you have to report your taxes. So I think there's a threshold of around $150,000 where if you are earning above that, then you still have to pay taxes in the US. But even if you're earning below that, you still have to report your taxes to the US. The fact that the UK has so many tax treaties with different countries allows you to have massive benefits when you are navigating and moving around the world, because essentially when you are no longer a UK resident, you don't have to pay any UK taxes. And I was explaining this in my course as well, that I'm currently not a tax resident of any country. That I might change that though. I might change that because that has presented me with some issues when trying to buy property. There are many people who come from certain countries that they cannot say that, because regardless of whether they move to a different country, their primary country where they have citizenship will still require them to be a tax resident of that country. Another massive benefit as well, massive benefit that again, you don't realize when you live in the UK, because most people around you also have this same privilege, and that is literally just having a British passport makes things so much easier. I didn't realize how much of a privilege this was until I was working in Dubai, and I had colleagues from India, from the Philippines, from Mexico, and I saw how hard it was for them to even just go on holiday, go to a neighboring country. Let's say, for example, I'll say to my friend, oh, let's go to this country, like during the Eid holiday, let's just go to this country. And she'll be like, oh, like, okay, I have to first check this, I have to first check if there's a visa. Most British people, we literally just assume when we go to countries that we don't even need a visa anyways. When it comes to people who have other passports, it is a massive, massive hindrance not having as many visa-free countries that we have. And even for countries that require us to have visas, sometimes just seeing a British passport, they will let you off more easily than they will when you come from other countries. Even for example, like I have like people who were coming to visit me whilst I was in Dubai, for example, like a black male coming through the airport, and security would approach them and be like, where are you from, where are you going, kind of thing. And as soon as they showed them a British passport, it's fine, like it's like you go through. But if they were to come and show a Nigerian passport or an Indian passport or a Filipino passport, the treatment is going to be completely different. The fact that we can just wake up tomorrow and decide to go to another country, book our flight the same day, other people can't do that. They have to book a visa, meetings. And I only learned this like last year, right? They ask for their bank statements, they want to see, it's very intrusive. They do a whole interview for them and then can still say no. Like, yeah, having a British passport is a massive, massive benefit that you should be taking advantage of by leaving the UK. The last thing I'm gonna say, supposedly, apparently was a little bit controversial because I posted this as a reel, as a very short form reel. I didn't explain anything. And my point there was that having a British accent, I have realized, is an unspoken privilege because, and the simple reason is, I don't understand, because I listed the 4 points that I've listed to you guys and everyone was fine with that. With the British accent they had a problem with, which for me is counterintuitive because a British accent is an indicator of having a British passport, of having a British education. So why is a British accent, why is it so weird to say that that is a privilege? But it is. A lot of people will treat you differently. First of all, we all know that people think that a British accent is posh, even though like in the UK, my accent right now is definitely not posh. I have a London accent, definitely not posh. There are people who have very, very posh British accent. To us, when I say us, people from the UK, we would be like, oh my God, that is like a really posh accent. That's probably an indicator of someone who has money, etc. We would probably have that bias towards those people. But there are people who aren't able to point out these differences between the levels of the UK accent. And they just think that in general, just having a UK accent to them is something that is either you have more money, or maybe they think that you are more educated, or I don't know. People have biases based on your accent, and that is something that obviously, for example, if you go to America, right, everyone who's British and has gone to America, you know you're gonna hear, oh my God, I love your accent, or whatever. You hear that, but that doesn't necessarily translate into other things necessarily. But taking that accent into certain regions, into certain countries, people will treat you differently. People will act like your ideas are better because you're saying it in a particular accent, you guys. And this stuff is me being completely like real and honest with you on the realities of life. This is the closest some of us will ever get to experiencing what white privilege is like. But people really do treat you differently based on your accent, and that can translate into work, and for some people that translate into their dating options. Just little things like this that you were able to unlock when you leave the UK. But when you are in the UK and everyone around you has these same privileges, you aren't able to stand out and use those privileges to your benefit. So this video might be a little bit controversial, but to be honest, it shouldn't be, because if you know that white privilege is a thing, then Western privilege is also a thing. British privilege is also a thing. These things are not mutually exclusive. I hope this will convince some of you to start looking for opportunities outside of the UK. For those of you who are thinking about it and need that extra push, let this be the push. Let me know your thoughts on this down below, and I especially want to hear from other people who have left the UK, and I know you guys can co-sign what I'm saying here. Some people don't like to admit it because either some people don't want to recognize their privilege, or there are other people who don't want to recognize that other people have privilege because it makes them feel bad. And I can understand that. I can definitely understand that. Comment down below, let me know your thoughts. Keep it respectful, otherwise you'll get blocked, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye.